Hello everyone, it's Mari here for Honeybee Stamps. I'm going to be creating an A2 size card here for you today, and I'm going to be using the gorgeous, or a piece of paper from this gorgeous vitamin C paper pad. You can see all of the beautiful patterns that are in this 8x6 paper pad. This is a brand new size for Honeybee and it is spectacular. I really love it. And all of the patterns are just so beautiful, but I chose this starfish pattern. I've cut the panel down to fit the front of my A2 size card here. I'm going to adhere that onto my card front, and I am going to actually cut a circle shape out of the front of my card. I'm going to be using this die from the Sweet Stack Circles die set. This is a die set from Honeybee that is a stacking circle die set. It's fantastic. It's a really great go-to die set that I use a lot. And so I'm going to use this size here that you can just see is slightly smaller than my A2 size card front. And this is actually a perfect size to match up with the Ocean Circle Scape die that I'm going to be using in conjunction with this set. So you'll see that as I go. But there is that circle die cut out of the front of my card. I just opened the card up and ran it through my die cutting machine. And now what I want to do is just trace that circle onto the inside of my card so that when I place the circle shape inside of the card, I have a guide to know exactly where to adhere that circle to. So you're just going to see me here tracing with my pencil. And this will all make sense, I promise, as I go along here. So I have that shape. Now this is the Ocean Circlescape die. This is fantastic. I love it. I am going to use that in that opening, in that circle on the inside of the card. And what I did was I just took my pencil again and I traced around some of those different shapes in that die because I want to do some ink blending first before I die cut this out. So I have another piece of cardstock. This is another A2 size white card panel. And I'm going to do some ink blending. I'm going to start off here with some Speckled Egg. And I'm just using my Honeybee Stamps blending brush here to brush on some blue color where the waves part of that die is going to land when I die cut this out. So it's just a little bit easier, I think, to do the ink blending before you die cut. And that's what I was going for here. So this is one technique that you can use to help you do some ink blending with that Oceanscape or Ocean Circlescape die before you actually do the die cutting. Of course, you could also die cut this die out of different colors of colored cardstock as well. That would be another great way to colorize it. But I really wanted to use my inks just because then I can control what color I get, as opposed to just going into my stash of cardstock and looking for a color that might not just be quite right. So I love Speckled Egg, and I'm really kind of going for muted tones for this beautiful oceanscape scene that I'm going to be creating here with my inks. So just blending on that Speckled Egg here, getting that on in relatively decent solid coverage. It doesn't have to be totally opaque, but I wanted to make sure that there was enough color on there for that to appear to be water. And I am using my ink stand here, you can see from the ink stand company, to hold my distress ink in place as I'm using that to blend the ink on. Moving now to antique linen. I'm just going to switch out my brush and grab a brush that has yellow ink in it. I don't wash my brushes all of the time. I have a set of brushes dedicated to oxide inks so that I'm not mixing my oxides and my dye ink brushes. And I love the detail brushes from Honeybee. They are so perfect for situations like this where you just need just a little bit in a tiny little area. And so I'm using the smaller, actually this is the tiniest blending brush from Honeybee. So Honeybee has two different sets of blending brushes that you can buy in sets. And there's the larger set and then there's the detail set. And this is the smallest brush from the detail set, which I love for these tiny little areas. It's just perfect. You can just see how nice that inkstand is as well. And Honeybee does sell those in their shop. I will be sure to link this inkstand up. What's really great also is that it has magnets on either side. So if you want to use more than one inkstand at a time, you can definitely do that. You can keep them together with those magnets works really well. So now I am using some scattered straw. Once again, I love scattered straw like antique linen. It's a really muted, it's not bright at all color. It's just kind of like really nice and understated. And I love that about the scattered straw. I love the distress color line because there's virtually a color for everything. And this color just pairs so nicely with the antique linen. So I'm going to use this color on the rays of the sun. So I used that antique linen on the actual sun. And now you can just see here I'm using the scattered straw on the sun rays that will be cut out with that ocean circlescape dye. So I'm just going to go over that again, just really lightly. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to blend this on and make sure that I get a decent amount of coverage using the pencil line that I traced, using that dye to help me see how far out I need to go with my ink and that kind of thing. So once I have that all good to go, I'm going to switch this up, and I think I'm going to go to dried marigold possibly now. Yes, I'm going to use some dried marigold. And I wanted to use this again on the sun, the little area of the sun there, just to make my little sun appear to be more of an orangey yellow color. And if you've ever seen a sunset before, which I'm sure you have, the sun definitely has kind of like an orangey tone to it as it's going down. And now you can just see here, I'm going to fit that ocean circlescape dye over top of my ink blending. I don't think I mentioned it, but I'm using the waffle flower stencil mat or blending mat here. Love that mat. It's perfect for ink blending. So I am going to now just take some adhesive and start to add these die cut pieces together on the inside of my project so that they will be fit into place perfectly to line up with that circle opening in the front of the cards from that window. I want you to be able to look through to the inside of the card and see this really pretty oceanscape. And I have used my low tack tape to tape the waves together just so that it's a little bit more easy to put them into place. So I'll just put my adhesive onto my card base and then I'll lay those pieces down together. And in that way, I will add those all to the area at one time. And it will just be a little bit more simple to get these placed in that way. And if I need to move any of them, I can just do that individually once I get them placed down here. So this worked really well. So I'm going to take that tape off and I'll add the sun into that last little opening there. And now that is all finished. And I love how that looks through that window in the front of the card. I'm going to put this into my splat box and add a little bit of shimmer spritz. This is like a clear sheer shimmer spritz. It's really pretty. I love the sparkle and shine that added to that little seascape. I am going to use the Lovely Layers Seashore dies. These are fantastic. I love them. I highly recommend them. They're so cool, and you get these really beautiful layered seashells for your project. So I'm going to go back in with the same colors that I used on the ink blending for my little oceanscape there. I'm going to use the same colors on my shells just because I wanted it all to coordinate together nicely. So I'll go back in and use my speckled egg again for the layers for this shell. And I actually will also use a little bit of Unchartered Mariner to add a little bit of darker tone there as well. Again, this is just adding some color. The nice thing about the darker color is it's just going to add a little bit more depth to my little shells as I work on adding these together as layers. And so you'll see me doing that later. I'll go ahead and glue these pieces together, but I just want to get everything all ink blended up before I move on to that step. So this is the antique linen again. I'm going to go over this shell here and all of its different pieces with that antique linen color. Really super pretty. I think I actually use a little bit of gathered twigs on the edge of this one just to, again, give it some dimension on the edges. Love bringing a little bit of that darker color into the edges and just defining the edges of the piece a little bit and giving it some depth and dimension in that way as well. So just going to go in and lightly add that on. to all of the different layers of this shell. So that first shell just had 2 layers. This shell has 3. You can see how easily these are going to fit together on my project or for the different shells. It's really, really easy to layer these together, like just super easy. So add a little bit more of that gathered twigs there. For my last shell, I'm going to use some antique linen to start. And then with this one, I wanted to go in and I wanted to create a little bit of an orangey pinky kind of a tone on this one with the dried marigold. And I feel like a shell like this often does have a little bit of a pink tone on it, but I didn't want to actually add pink, so that my dried marigold is going to kind of act as a little bit of a orangey pinky tone, I guess. But I love this color. It's super pretty. And of course it is going to be on the inside of the card where that sun is. So this is all going to go together super nicely with my color scheme that I chose for the inside of the card. So I'm just going to use that really fine detail blending brush to add the details with the dried marigold. You can just see here I'm going in and adding it just to some of the edges of the Lovely Layers seashells, or this set is actually called Lovely Layers Seashore, but the shells are just so cute. I love them. They're adorable. So here you can just see this is going to fit together like that. I love that. And these shells are going to just be the perfect embellishments for the front of my card. Now I'm just using a little bit of liquid adhesive here to glue these different layers together, and also using my tweezers to help me with this really fine detail work. So just going to use, again, just that liquid adhesive to put these together. Super, super easy to do. And these are just absolutely so stunning when they are finished up. So again, Honeybee has more lovely layers with the Perfect Day release. Really gorgeous. The magnolia, these seashells, beautiful. I love them so much. So they're always fun. And you can just see how they just fit together so well. Now this is a frame that I cut with the Circle Scape Shaker frame dies. I just used this one die from that set to create a frame. And I'm going to use that frame around my little ocean scape here. So I'm going to just take that. I have cut that from some really pretty gold metallic cardstock. And I'm just going to add that to the inside of my card. It's a little bit unexpected. You might think to have a frame on the outside around the window on the outside of the card, but I just thought this was really cool. Just adds a little bit of detail to the inside and to that window of the project. So there you can see that is added, and now I'm just going to add my shells to the outside of my card there, to the lower area of the circle. I think they look super pretty there, and there's a very logical spot for my sentiment now with the placement of the shells in that area. I added a little bit of dimensional adhesive on the blue shell, but the other 2 shells are just added flat to the card front. And I love that. I love the sparkle and shine of that shimmer spritz. I think it's really pretty. The sentiment I'm using is from the On the Line Succulent set. So that's the On the Line Succulent set. It is a very cool set. I love the scripty hello from that set, so I'm going to stamp that out. I'm going to ink up the stamp with some Honeybee Stamps clear embossing ink. I am first going to treat my white cardstock here in my MISTI with a little bit of anti-static powder tool so that my embossing powder only sticks to my embossing ink and not my paper. So here's my clear Honeybee embossing ink. I'm just going to ink up my stamp and stamp out that sentiment hello onto my white cardstock, and then I'll add a little bit of gold embossing powder over top with my little spoon here, my little Nouveau spoon. I love using this little spoon to get my powder onto a small area like this, and you can just see I'll tap the excess off. I'll heat that with my heat tool and melt it, and voila, we have a beautiful scripty hello sentiment for the front of our card. Now, of course, there's a coordinating die for that, as always, with Honeybee. And so I'm just going to use my low tack tape to tape on that die, and I'll die cut that out. I'm actually going to die cut that same die numerous times and stack those together so that I get a really nice dimensional stacked sentiment. So I've cut that 3 times, and then of course the 4th time with the embossing. I'll glue these all together, and I'll show you when I'm finished here how dimensional that makes the sentiment when it's all finished. So it works really well. I highly recommend this when you're creating a sentiment for the front of your project, especially something that's scripty like this. I think it works really, really well, and it's very easy to do. So I'm just adding that liquid adhesive onto each one of the different layers. There you can see that final layer, and then I'll add the heat embossed hello to the top, and then I'll just add a little bit of liquid adhesive to the bottom and the back of the piece and adhere that onto my card front. So I'm just going to use little dots of glue, and I'll add that hello piece on top, and this will be all ready for adding onto my card front here. So I'm just going to pick that up and just use my fingers to get that so that it's all lined up properly. And with the addition of a little bit of adhesive, we can get this onto the card. There is just that perfect little spot for that sentiment on the front, and there's still lots of room on the inside of the card to add a little message to the recipient. I have linked up to all of the different products that I used in my project today in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.